Okay, let's get into this. We're looking at a really interesting legal development today.
Yeah, it involves those, familiar Trump-era tariffs, steel and aluminum.
Exactly. And our guide here is some reporting from CNN about a pretty significant appeals court decision.
That's right. It's thrown a bit of a curveball into the mix.
So for this deep dive, our mission is basically to figure out what's going on. We've got these tariffs imposed like literally hours before a presidential changeover.
Uh-huh. Wild timing.
And the question is, why is that timing such a big deal? And what does this latest court action actually mean? That's what we need to unpack.
Okay, so the core issue here, it's about tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. They were tweaked or maybe reimposed through an executive order.
Right, and the key thing, which CNN highlights, is when this happened.
Yeah.
January 20th, 2021,
Signed by then President Trump.
Inauguration Day. And it wasn't just any time on Inauguration Day.
No, that's the crucial part. The lawsuit claims it happened hours after noon.
After his term technically ended, right? But just before the new Biden administration was really fully up and running.
Exactly, that little window, that sort of legal gray area between presidencies.
And that's what a trade group representing aluminum importers jumped on.
Precisely. They sued. Their argument was, well, pretty simple, actually.
What, that he couldn't sign it then?
Basically, yeah. They argued that since it was signed after noon on January 20th, Trump didn't actually have presidential authority anymore at that specific moment.
And wow, they won that in the lower court.
They did. The lower court agreed, said the tariffs imposed by that specific order were illegal for that reason, because the term had effectively ended.
That's a pretty big ruling. Must have caused a stir.
Oh, absolutely. A major win for the importers. But, and this is the latest news from CNN,
There's a but. Okay.
a federal appeals court has now stepped in,
Hmm.
and they've paused that lower court ruling.
Paused it. Okay, what does paused mean in this context? Does it mean the appeals court thinks the lower court got it wrong? That the tariffs are actually legal?
Good question. And no, it doesn't mean that. Not yet, anyway.
Oh.
The pause is, well, it's procedural. It doesn't say anything about whether the tariffs themselves are ultimately legal or illegal based on that timing argument.
So it just stops the lower court's decision, puts it on hold.
Exactly. It prevents that illegal declaration from taking immediate effect. Buy some time, basically.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So why do that? Why hit pause?
Well, the main reason is to let the legal process play out properly. Meaning it gives the current administration, the Biden administration, the chance to formally appeal the lower court's decision.
Right. Without the pause, things could get messy immediately.
Right.
Like refunds or trade changes happening before the appeal is even heard.
Precisely. It just keeps things as they are, maintains the status quo while the government prepares its challenge to that ruling.
So the appeals court isn't taking sides on the tariff legality itself. They're just saying, hold on, let the government make its case on appeal before we change anything.
You've got it. It's standard procedure, really, acknowledging there's still a dispute and the government gets its day in appeals court.
So this whole fight over these specific tariffs, the ones signed in those final kind of frantic hours, it's definitely not finished.
Far from it. The legal battle continues.
It really is a fascinating look at the mechanics of power transfer, isn't it? And how actions right at the end can be challenged.
Yeah, it really highlights the scrutiny applied to those final moments. This whole case pivots on just a few hours.
Which raises some bigger questions, I think.
Like what?
Well, like, what are the practical limits on presidential power during that handover period, as one administration is packing up and the next is moving in?
That's a great point. This case really pushes on that boundary.
And thinking even bigger picture, how do these kinds of legal challenges, focusing so intensely on timing and procedure, end up shaping trade policy down the road? Not just for steel and aluminum, but for how presidents handle these things in future transitions.
That's definitely something to keep an eye on, Something for all of us to think about as this appeal works its way through the courts.